Welcome to Alberta Conservation Association's Harvest Your Own podcast, the resource for everything hunting, navigating through the field, the butcher shop, and the kitchen. Life is all about great food. Let's get started.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Brad Fenson, an avid outdoor enthusiast who has worked as a freelance journalist, photographer, and public speaker for over 3 decades. I have hunted, fished, and foraged all my life and hope to share my passion for the outdoors. Along the way, I want to encourage everyone to harvest wild proteins and enjoy the satisfaction of providing the next meal for your family. Our goal is to educate, entertain, and inspire individuals to get outdoors and create a connection between food, health, and your future meals. Welcome to Harvest Your Own. This week, we're going to be talking about waterfowl and what our populations look like, how seasons are set, and what might be in the future, and some of the things that have to be done in order to have new opportunities. We have Jason Caswell in studio today, and we appreciate him coming out. Jason, what's your role with Fish and Wildlife?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm the provincial game bird specialist with the hunting and fishing branch, Forestry and Parks Ministry.
Yeah, not Fish and Wildlife anymore. It's hunting and fishing branch, but everyone still calls it Fish and Wildlife.
Even we do sometimes.
Right. You know, waterfowl, people that are into it, it's a passion. Like, I don't think I could go a year without hunting and chasing ducks and geese. Even just going out in the spring to watch them, enjoy them, and do all that. There's a lot of people like that. How are our waterfowl populations monitored and watched, and how long has it been going on?
That's a good question. The waterfowl surveys, the Continental Waterfowl Surveys, is the longest running wildlife survey in the world.
Right.
Started in the mid-'70s, I don't know the exact year. It was the mid to early 70s. They started its cooperative project with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Canadian Wildlife Service, now referred to as ECCC, and then a bunch of state and province representation. And of course, my affiliation would be through Alberta. But I've been doing it since 1994, so that'd be 32 years I've been involved.
Wow.
Every spring in May, we head out, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service comes up to Canada and with their planes, and they fly standard surveys from the air, segments across the province, across all the provinces and states where there are breeding waterfowl, but for Alberta. And then there's a ground crew. We come along and we sort of replicate a section of their aerial path, and we kind of count we beat out the ducks out of the grass and kick them out of the cattails and do more of a complete count, which offers us the ability to get a correction factor from the plane, because flying at 100 kilometers an hour at 100 feet, or it's
challenging.
You miss a few. The odd green wing slips by. So
yeah, I did that for years when I worked for Ducks Unlimited. That's many moons ago. Right. But I just saw a post from North Dakota Game and Fish today. Actually, they were saying it's their 79th year that they've been part of the survey, and they mentioned it's the oldest survey in North America. So it's a lot of information that's been gathered. Some started before that, but there's the information is gathered on transects that are the same every year. So you have a control in the information that you're collecting.
Yeah, and that really helps when we're doing the habitat part too. So we monitor the water levels year after year after year, looking at the same ponds. So you can get a really interesting long-term trend of waters coming up and down. And having done it for so many years, every year I'm kind of astounded looking at the same landscape, same ponds, same field, and like, man, I remember back when this whole quarter section was flooded.
Right? Yeah, it's strange.
Now it's dry as a bone, and then 4 years later, it's full of cattails and ducks. It's interesting, these water cycles.
Yeah, it's interesting because last fall was probably one of the driest falls that I've ever encountered. There were still birds around, but they were really localized and seemed like everyone knew where that localized population was. And I was worried about this year going into things that it was the driest I'd ever seen. I just said that the areas I hunt, 90% of the wetlands were 100% dry, which is scary. And now things have turned around to the point where it is the complete opposite. We have water standing, flowing, and stuff from all the rains we've had this summer where I've never seen it.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife yesterday. Of course, she was not pleased with the inability to sit in the backyard and get on, go fishing in the lake. But I said, it's pretty exciting from a duck biologist perspective. Like, water tables are filling up, places like Beaver Hill Lake is going to get a big surge of water. All these wetlands will be full. It disperses the ducks. Survival of the ducklings is going to go up because they're not as easy to find.
Yeah, well, not only that, but, a lot of times haying operations in Alberta are going in June. Well, nobody's haying in central or southern Alberta, and I don't think they will be for weeks if the rains slow down.
Yeah, those late nesting birds, it's great for them. They'll have higher success, but they're not going to get run over or hayed. Yeah.
There's always trade-offs. The landowners are struggling this year. They had drought last year. They're drowning out this year. So it's great for ducks. It's not so great for farmers, but hopefully there's a balance down the road somewhere.
Yeah, well, you're right. Yeah.
We can't control it. So we have to work with what we have.
Yeah, the heavy snowpack in the winter really helps charge the wetlands in the spring for the ducks. It's hard on the deer. It's
part of living in the north.
It is.
How do we set our waterfowl seasons? I hunt the full season. I'm often out opening day in the north, which is September 1st, and I'm often out the last day of the season, which I believe is December 23rd in the south, and take advantage of all of it. Seasons open and close the same every year, and they have for quite a while now. But our seasons are congruent. They don't change. We don't have a split season where, in the south, the birds hang around long enough. We could have a closure sometime and then have a season goes into January. But how are our seasons and limits set in Alberta?
Well, it's interesting. They say, like, as you mentioned, they stay pretty similar year after year after year. The U.S. is quite a bit more reactive. They adaptively manage their harvest based on their harvest regulations, based on our spring surveys we were referring to earlier. They look at the number of ducks that are on the landscape breeding, like the breeding population, and then we look at the number of ponds that we're counting, and that's sort of an indication of maybe breeding success. And then they'll come back in July and do brood counts, and they have a good eye. Then they predict that fall flight, the number of birds coming out of Canada and out of the northern U.S. And then they have meetings to set, they put it through a model and whether they're going to be restrictive or liberal, and then they make slight adjustments from there. The international sort of the policy is that Canada's should be allocated roughly half of the harvest. Now, we're obviously not going to shoot half the birds. Like there's a lot of people hunting in the U.S. So given that we are usually well under, with a couple of exceptions, like black ducks out east, for instance, with a couple of exceptions, we're well under our half. So more and more, the thought is stabilizing our regulations is it's scientifically responsible. Like we don't have to chase conservation, and it's easier on the hunters. So you've noticed over the years, one, our dates don't change. Two, our bag limits don't change, and even our restrictions that we've had in place in different jurisdictions slowly disappear. Whether it's white fronts or pintails, or if you're looking a little bit farther east into Manitoba, canvasbacks.
Right, which has been wonderful. I mean, we used to have restrictions on white fronts, like you said. I remember, even pintail, even mallards some years. So to me, there's never been a better time to be a waterfowl hunter. Their birds are there. Things are very stable in terms of populations. But, in Alberta as a whole, we don't have to have a lot of restrictions for most species because I'd say most hunters chase mallards, pintails. There's not a lot of water hunters. Most duck hunters in Alberta don't own waders, which is odd.
Yeah, you're right. They're definitely. I grew up in Manitoba where there was a bit more of a culture for diver hunting and getting out with your boats, your canoes, or your sneak box, Barnegat Bay boxes or whatever. Not a sink box, but like to row or paddle around the marsh. So it's a little different here. There's a more of a tradition to hunt to mallards and geese in fields or small potholes for sure. With the number of mallards on the landscape, I mean, restrictions are unnecessary. And then with how little pressure the divers get here, there's not much need to restrict.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It's too bad that more hunters haven't tried that because I love hunting water too. I've got some buddies that are strictly water hunters. They have dogs, and that's how they fill their cup, basically, is being on the water. And others are the complete opposite. If they can't wear their running shoes or boots and be in a field, then it's a completely different experience for them. So it's different to watch those different communities within the waterfowl hunters and see what they really hone in on, because they don't diversify very much.
This podcast is produced for Harvest Your Own, a program dedicated to those who want to reconnect with food and health through their experiences outdoors. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a resource for individuals to learn more about hunting and the outdoors. There's information to get you started and ensure that your compass stays pointed in the right direction to be successful. Where's your next meal coming from?
What is different in Alberta versus other provinces and states? Like, how do we, lots of times I hunt a lot of the different states and I see restrictions and split seasons. They try to predict when more birds will be there and open it up and then close for 2 weeks, give the birds a rest, reopen up. But ours is straight through. It's one season, wide open, and very, very few restrictions, as you mentioned. The one that is interesting is one of the golden eyes is restricted for non-resident hunters.
Yeah, that's been in place for a few years. We have the Barrow's goldeneye, which are sort of a ephemeral or rare visitor to Alberta, but there's a couple lakes in particular where they seem to drift over and spend their summer. And someone, Ducks Unlimited biologist, did a research project out on one of the lakes and determined that there was unusually high harvest. They're being targeted by some non-residents, and there was some concern that that specific population could get depressed. So it was targeted specifically at a couple lakes just to make sure that the Barrow's population that would otherwise head to the coast for the winter didn't come back in short supply.
Right. It's fun to see the different species. I mean, the golden eyes are pretty fun to watch, especially in the spring when they have their courting dances and stuff. It's they're neat to key in on. Let's look at the regulations a little bit. We've had some changes in recent years. I say recent because I lived under the old regs for so long, but what about processing birds and getting them home, leaving wings on? There's still some people that always question me as to what the true understanding of it is.
Yeah, so forever and ever, we always had to leave a wing on the birds while they were, in transport or at home for identification. In a big modernization effort, the federal government really looked at that and decided that once birds were at home, they were effectively just your meat that was in your freezer. So they decided that as long as you process the birds for consumption, that you no longer had to keep a wing on. And most people are aware, like that could be, the edible parts removed and frozen or dried or canned and whatnot. Stipulations are you can't like get a generator in a deep freeze and put it in the back of your pickup truck and process them in the field and pop them in a freezer. That wouldn't qualify. You had to get to a place of residence, not your necessarily your permanent address, but a place of residence.
Okay. Yeah, I know that I've hunted some places in Saskatchewan, and this is a federal change, so it's right across Canada. But, we cleaned cranes and stuff, and they said, no, we've checked with everyone, and you can do that because we're staying here. We're all here all week. We're doing other things in the community, and then you can take those birds home safely. Yeah,
a lot of hotels will let you put them in their freezer. So that you could process them, put them in the freezer.
Yeah. So I think that'll clear things up for a lot of people. Recent years, too, we talk about cranes in Saskatchewan. We've had our Sandhill crane season here. It took a long time to get that opened. I remember discussing that with you and other people in the department years ago. There was concerns from other groups that it might impact whooping cranes and other things, and maybe the Sandhills could be hurt in some way, but the season has been a success and the bird is doing wonderful.
Yeah, the population continentally, that mid-continent population of cranes that come through eastern Alberta is doing very well. Like, are they up over 1 million birds, I think, wow. or have been the last few years. Given the number that are shot every year in Saskatchewan, I wasn't too concerned, but it's always a bit of work to sort of get over that hump and get people to buy in, once we've had the season for a few years and everyone's become comfortable with it.
Right. Yeah, I know I've got out. Our flyaway isn't as active as Saskatchewan's. We get a lot of birds that fly over us to out, I think that they use the same wetlands every year. Some of those older birds are really keyed in on it and return to the same areas every year. But we see a lot of birds pass over Alberta that are headed into Saskatchewan. But there are a lot in the eastern part of the province that stick around. And even just east of Edmonton, there's some, I'm finding that now that the season's open, we're watching them. They'll come in at the same time every year and they'll stick around for 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 or 6 days. But you can count on them. You can go out and target them during those weeks along their migration.
Yeah, they're a really interesting bird to hunt. Very, very different experience.
Yeah. Now, we've also seen some changes last year in Ontario. They got a mourning dove season, which is another migratory game bird that's, is it controlled just by the feds or is it also by the province?
Also by the province, yeah. We have sort of additional regulation on all of our migratory birds, or all of our birds, yeah.
Right. You know, it's interesting because the new opportunities seem to be coming faster. We changed things in Alberta here too. We can now hunt double-crested cormorants. Mm-hmm. There's no shortage of them. No. I guess landowners can harvest. Landowners or residents or someone that's authorized by the landowner can shoot them on private property. I think the intent was to protect stock dugouts and whatnot, right. But now they're included in an actual hunting season. Yeah, as long as the waterfowl season, the duck season is open. They made it ducks because there's also a spring snow goose season, I believe. Is that why it was done that way?
Exactly.
But if the duck season's open, you can shoot cormorants.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone that's tried it?
No, I don't.
I don't either, which is odd. I thought people would be out, there's people that chase and collect waterfowl or looking for all the different species in North America. And whenever there's something new, like when the cranes came out, there was lots of people went out, but I have not heard much about the cormorants at all.
Yeah, I kind of thought it'd be a little more opportunistic. Yeah. Guys would be over the water hunting ducks and some cranes or cormorants would come by and might try it out. But you have to retrieve them. I don't know. I can't think offhand of anyone that's super excited about trying to eat them.
Right.
But you must retrieve them. Yeah.
You can't leave them out there. That's for sure.
You can't leave them on the water, no.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because Ontario opened their cormorant season before we did. And it took a little bit of time to get some momentum, but people are actually targeting them now.
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't know of anyone that's actually eaten them. I would imagine they're pretty fishy, but people like eating fish. Maybe they'll like those types of birds.
Maybe.
Yeah. Another thing we can talk about is tundra swans. We look at North America as a whole, and there's some states that have tundra swan seasons. Are there any in Canada?
None. No.
There isn't.
Not yet, no.
Yeah. Is there an allocation? Is there something in place where there's a potential to have a swan season?
Yes. So there's Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta are all sort of earmarked for the potential of a season. The feds are looking into the possibility at the moment. A lot of people might be aware of it being advertised on the Gazette for comment. The interesting dichotomy there is Manitoba and Saskatchewan kind of follow along the central flyway and a different population than the western population that Alberta has. So the management plan is written differently in either of those two jurisdictions. So for Alberta, we don't have a specific allocation, but the management plan is written that accommodates a provincial season.
Right.
So it acknowledges that province would be Alberta, BC, I guess, could have a season. Whereas Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the harvest is written that it would be divided equally among sort of the breeding, migration, and wintering area. And the breeding area would encompass a lot of the Canadian jurisdictions. So that allocated harvest is redistributed south because there's no hunting seasons in Canada. But in Alberta, it's not quite as cut and dry. However, it's there is allowance for it.
Right. So I know there are seasons south of us. Montana has a draw system that actually Alberta residents can put into. I know some of the more avid waterfowlers that I know have put in for the draws, and they go down there almost every year because there's actually some areas that are they don't give out all the draws. So for a period, you can buy them across the counter. But there is a lot of interest in swans. Personally, I've been down to the Great Salt Lake. I drew a tag there a couple of years ago and went down and did a late season hunt for them. It was pretty exciting. They're a big bird.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, not as big as the trumpeter swan.
No.
And that's where we have to be, I guess, pretty aware of any discussion of a tundra swan season, we'd have to sort of navigate around any risks to trumpeter swans.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they do the same at the Great Salt Lake. In order for me to purchase my license or get it after the draw, I had to take an online course to learn identification. And, it got right into the weeds. It wasn't easy. You had to pay attention and look at all the details. And I thought they did a very good job of laying it out in terms of making it easier for hunters to be in the field and be able to identify the tundra swans by the size, the shape, the sound. There's a lot of different things that we can key in on.
Yeah, I think if depending how the federal process goes, if we start looking a little further, we'd definitely be communicating with a lot of those states and how they manage.
Yeah. Would that change the allocation in the States at all? Is there a allocation North America wide that we would then be part of, or is it already set, just that some of it doesn't get used?
For the Western population, that Alberta would be considered harvesting, I don't believe so. Obviously, we would be in discussion with the Pacific Flyway to decide, or they would sort of make that decision on their own, or we would cooperatively manage in terms of like how many we would allocate if we got to that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And would it be like other jurisdictions where it would be a very limited season where you'd actually have to draw a tag? Alberta's got, I think we're upwards of 18,000 waterfowl hunters in the province, something like that. Obviously, not everybody would hunt them. Not everyone's interested, but there's not a bird for everyone at that number, is there?
Yeah, I would anticipate something like that.
Yeah.
If I recall, the federal proposal proposed in the neighborhood of 500 tags. I mean, that's it's a bit of a place marker. Like, it's not something that we've discussed, but at first, and probably going forward, it would be somewhat of a limited hunt if we got to that point.
Right. So we went through the same steps with getting our crane season. Did it all go through the feds the same way?
Yes, it did. Yeah. We have to go through the feds first. Once we get federal approval, and they'll assess the request, or they assess the crane request on its scientific merits. And once, and then they open it up to public comment, provided there was nothing brought to light that was missed, then they would proceed with a bit of a regulation change in the federal migratory bird reg, at which time we would concurrently be running consultation and processing here in our provincial wildlife reg at the same time.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It never happens overnight. It's a long process, and it took a long time to get the cranes. I think waterfowl hunters in general here celebrated that new opportunity. Sort of breathes new life into it too. With back in the 80s, I think we had close to 85,000 waterfowl hunters at the peak. And then we had everything from the end of lead shot to access issues and depressed populations, and our hunter numbers went down drastically and sort of settled in just under that 20,000 number.
This podcast was made possible by Alberta Conservation Association and the Harvest Your Own community. If you're interested in harvesting your own food, there's a comprehensive collection of information to gain insight and knowledge. Head to the field, harvest your own protein, prepare it, and taste the results. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a library of information from getting started and geared up to processing, butchering, and cooking wild game to make the connection between health and food.
We still have a large harvest, though, by non-residents. How does that play into things?
Well, it certainly does. I mean, they come up, and they're a fairly active component of our hunting public, especially for waterfowl. They mix around the province. Some use outfitters to help them out, some don't. There's a lot of relationships in the landscape between non-residents and some landowners, long-term repeat hunters that come up. In terms of management, we monitor harvest overall. We monitor harvest by residency. I mean, that was one of the factors we used to eliminate the restriction on white fronts. We do harvest more white fronts as a proportion of hunters, like relative to the U.S., than maybe other species, still well below the 50%. However, a fairly sizable percentage of that were by U.S. hunters up in Canada.
Oh, interesting.
So that's why the residents, we dropped the restriction.
Yeah. It's hard to understand that how many more waterfowl hunters are in the States, but I was doing some stuff with Federal Ammunition one time when they were looking at advertising in Canada in different magazines and to hunters and stuff like that. And they brought up a stat that sort of put it in perspective for me. They said, we have as many waterfowl hunters in Louisiana as there is in all of Canada. Now, I don't know if those numbers are the same today, but it really does help to put it in perspective about how our harvest is minimized by our numbers and why we have very liberal seasons, more open limits and all the rest of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually lived and went to school hunting in Louisiana for a few years, and it was a crazy positive experience in terms of just the culture and how to deal with hunter density. It's something that we kind of take for granted in Canada. I mean, dropping a duck in your neighbor's decoy spread is a common practice, and it's not because it sailed off several hundred meters. It's just that's how densely packed a lot of these hunting areas are, especially in particular public hunting areas.
Yeah, I always chuckle when people here say that there's too much competition and there's too many hunters on the landscape. Alberta's a huge province, and with 18,000 waterfowl there's more room than we're so blessed. It's hard for people to actually see that. Yeah,
it's unless you experience it, you don't realize that we're very fortunate.
Yeah, it's a different game down there. Some of the species we don't really get a lot of opportunity for. We hear about blue wing seasons on the coast of Texas early. Major reason for that is most of our adult male birds are gone in August. They molt and fly the coop.
Yeah, blue wings in particular, early migrants, they're gone in September. Everyone will have a story that they shot a blue wing in October. That's, of course, not uncommon, but the vast majority of them are long gone.
Yeah.
Again, referring to Louisiana, they had a 2-week teal season in September, and then everything shuts down, and then it opens back up in November for the first half of their regular season. But even Louisiana, they have to have that 2-week season in September, because if they wait until November, they're gone down into Central America.
Moving further on. Yeah. Pintails are the same. Adult male pintails, they molt and get out of Alberta pretty quick.
Early migrants, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we do see some nice birds later in the season, October, even into November, but those would typically be juveniles of the year, like young of the year, that are pinned up like that?
Well, I don't exactly know if they're just late migrants or got hung out, or if they're young birds that were just delayed getting going. But you're right. When you do find them late, they're usually pretty nice looking, but they're harder to find for sure.
Yeah. COVID now, 6 years behind us. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but it really changed some of the management in Canada. Used to shoot a fair number of snows and Rosses that had bands on them. Are they back up north doing more snow goose stuff?
Not as much. I mean, a lot of that banding that we've done in the north is to find survival rates, to track our nesting populations, where they're wintering, how many are coming back. And I remember we'd be banding up to 10,000 birds a year in different areas.
Yeah.
I've been up on Baffin Island, Southampton Island, East Coast Hudson Bay, banding big groups of snow geese. And as that data rolls in and we have a better understanding of how things are working, I think take the foot off the gas a bit. The data is now, it's nice to have the data, but the cost and the effort to get it isn't necessarily matches the value of that continuing data that's coming in.
Yeah, and it's not going to change the results of the data you already have.
Not really. So you can actually get the same, once you have enough data to get those numbers, you can maintain it with less effort.
Right. Is there any other banding going on in Alberta or Western Canada?
Sure. There's a lot of duck banding. Yeah, we have a lot of locations throughout Prairie Canada and in Alberta as well, where guys are focusing predominantly on mallards. There's some U.S. crews that come up that perpetually try to band lesser scaup or divers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's been pintail efforts down in that east central part of Alberta.
Yeah. It's interesting, the information you find. I love the spring snow goose seasons. I think it's just an excuse for me to get outdoors again, but we harvest a fair number of birds. And I noticed a lot of the Ross's populations are the tail end of our migration every spring. And that includes some adult birds. I've shot 2 now that are over 18 years old that had bands on them that were worn into like a horseshoe on one end. But one was 18 and a half, and I believe the other was 20 and a half years old, which is pretty incredible. Yeah. So we can learn a lot about those birds, and a lot of people might not think that they live that long, but they do. And that's a pile of miles they're putting on, migrating south and back north every year. We're for some of those birds, we're halfway on their migration route.
Yeah. They cover an incredible amount of miles. And, they can, there's a lot, if you dig through the banding data, you see some really old birds, 20-year-old canvasbacks and 20 plus year old birds of all kinds of species. And you think those are just birds that we've able to put a band on them, often as an adult, so we don't know how old they are when they were banded.
Right, yeah.
And then happen to get harvested late enough to get another snapshot later in their life. So in the absence of hunting, they do have quite a long lifespan. And that's, I think, how their populations can increase so rapidly, especially when the populations get high. Hunting pressure seems to target young birds, but young birds are a bit more vulnerable, don't have the experience. So we'll keep shooting those young birds, but the adults ones that'll live year after year after year, and they keep having young, like eventually a few of those young, if they replace themselves twice over, they've doubled. They're able to double their contribution to the population.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Yeah, waterfowl are interesting. Any shortfalls or gaps in the research that need to be looked at? Always, right?
Well, yeah. Where did I start? I'm out. I haven't been in the research end of it for a while, but I imagine if I talk to some of my old colleagues, they'd have a lot of great ideas.
Yeah, I've seen the Caswell name on some of my band returns from up north. Sounds like you've spent a bit of time up there, and I know your dad was also up there for a long time.
Yeah. He ran a lot of banding up in Baffin Island for a number of years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, Alberta's pretty blessed. I think we have great waterfowl populations. We have extremely liberal seasons. But it's also important to know that we're getting new opportunities, whether it's cormorants that people aren't really taking advantage of, cranes that not everyone has figured out yet, or even tundra swans, where we might have a future that provides some opportunity for us there. Is there anything hunters can do? Should we, if we're interested in having a season, should we write the feds and tell them that we're interested? Or when you say they're looking for comments in the Gazette, is that from professionals or does it also include hunters?
That was from everybody. I believe the comment period's closed, and they what I heard was received an unprecedented number of comments.
Yeah,
probably positive and negative. I've been led to believe that any sort of decisions that will be forthcoming are generally based on science and thoughtful discussion. So we'll see. We'll see what the outcome is from the feds in terms of whether they're interested in proceeding, at which time, Alberta will have to look inward and decide, how we'd like to proceed.
Right. So, yeah, it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
No, certainly not, especially with the migratory bird stuff. We have different levels of government, all the way up to the federal government. And, of course, we've already initiated discussions in anticipation of this possibility. We've discussed with the flyways, Alberta with the both Central and Pacific Flyway, but the meaningful discussion was the Pacific Flyway, just sort of a bit of a heads up that this is being investigated. And there's a significant amount of interest from some of the states that are already harvesting. They were very keen on, keep us in the loop. If you feel like going forward, we'd love to be involved in discussions on how to manage, as you mentioned, how to manage trumpeter swans. And it'll be very helpful if we get to that point. Certainly pick their brains and sort of try not to reinvent the wheel.
Right. What is our swan population like right now in terms of stability, growing? How are they doing? The cranes, obviously, their population has been doing well. They're growing. They're doing very well. Are swans the same, or are they sort of stagnant?
Swans are tundra swan. The western population, tundra swans are actually doing quite well as well. I mean, I believe that I don't think that the federal government would be really considering this if they hadn't done their homework and realized that their populations were strong and increasing. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Have you ever eaten a swan?
I have not.
No. I cooked the one I shot down on the Great Salt Lake. I used a recipe from New Zealand that they use for cooking some of their older paradise ducks. So I stewed it with sour cherries, and it was actually very good. We had no problems cleaning it up, but there's a significant amount of meat on a tundra swan versus a duck.
Like that.
But yeah, just so if people were interested, they are very good to eat. There's a lot on them. The legs and thighs are as much meat as a big goose, I'd say. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future if we do get opportunities. If we do have a new draw structure that would include that, it might actually generate some more excitement amongst our waterfowl population, our hunters.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. Thank you for your expertise coming out today. It's always good to talk science and waterfowl. It's near and dear to my heart. Like I said, I couldn't go a year without doing it. I know you're an avid hunter as well, and probably appreciate having them. And do you have a favorite recipe for birds?
Every year I like to go back home and roast some lesser scaup or canvasback with my dad, and we just sit at the table and have our duck, and it's sort of as long as I can remember. We just oven roasted ducks has been sort of a bit of a household tradition.
Yeah, slow roasteds where they come out so tender they almost fall off the bone, or
yeah. Well, my dad actually likes to cook them fast and hot.
Okay.
Yeah, I just let he gets a charge out of doing it, so he's the boss. So
I've had it both ways, where it's like done medium rare, and the other way where it's done well done but cooked very slowly, and they're very tender. I had something like that in New Zealand too, where duck is king over there, and they really pride themselves in how they cook it. And lots of times when you go to the blind, you're handed a whole duck. That's your lunch or your treat to pick away at
nice
while you're hunting. So yeah, it's the waterfowl provides a great table fare. At our waterfowl warm-up event that the ACA puts on every year, we try to provide new recipes to encourage people to find ways to use them, because we are allowed a lot of birds, and whether it's ducks or geese, but having ways to utilize them makes it that much more. It's better for all of us to find ways to enjoy them.
Have you stumbled across that Arctic Goose joint venture snow goose cookbook?
Yeah, it's been out for like 25 years, I think, but I have, and it's got some wonderful recipes in it.
Yeah, it's a good, and you can find it online, so it's a good way to be creative if you wanted to experiment or try some really new stuff.
Some good diversity in there.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for your expertise. Thanks for coming out, and we'll sort of keep in touch with you in terms of what's developing with our swans.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. We hope to inspire people to reconnect with nature and appreciate where your food comes from by harvesting your own. For more information on getting started or to learn specifics about the Field to Fork experience, visit harvestyourown.ca and follow on Facebook and Instagram. Check back often for new material, recipes, and videos that are posted regularly. Please subscribe to Harvest Your Own podcast and take the time to rate and review the show to help us build a dedicated core of passionate hunters as our regular audience. Until next time, embrace the outdoors and all it has to offer. Thanks for joining us.